Hello, I'm Sebastian. Welcome to 9 Nar Trees podcast. Today, I will summarize and review the book. On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal by Naomi Klein is a collection of essays and speeches that argues the climate crisis is not only an environmental emergency, but also a political and economic turning point. Drawing on reporting, activism, and policy debate, Klein frames global warming as a consequence of extractive capitalism, deregulation, and patterns of inequality that concentrate risk on frontline communities. She contends that incremental reform and market-only solutions cannot match the speed and scale of change required, and she makes the case for a Green New Deal-style mobilization that links rapid decarbonization with jobs, justice, and public investment. Across the book, Klein connects climate impacts such as fires, storms, and heat waves with the deeper systems that shape energy, land, trade, and labor. The result is an urgent, accessible argument that climate action can be a pathway to a fairer economy, stronger democracies, and more resilient communities. I will give you key takeaways from this book. Firstly, climate emergency as a systemic crisis. Klein presents climate change as a stress test for the entire social order, rather than a single issue to be managed by better recycling or cleaner consumer choices. The core idea is that rising emissions are inseparable from an economic model built on endless growth, cheap fossil energy, and the offloading of costs onto people and ecosystems. In this framing, disasters like megafires and extreme storms are not freak events. They are predictable outcomes of a system that prioritizes short-term profit over long-term stability. Klein emphasizes that the climate crisis amplifies existing vulnerabilities, hitting hardest where housing is precarious, healthcare is limited, and political power is weak. This turns climate policy into a question of democracy and human rights as much as science. By treating the emergency as systemic, the book argues that solutions must be equally comprehensive, reshaping energy, transportation, agriculture, and industrial production together. It also challenges narratives that focus narrowly on technological fixes without confronting the political economy that determines which technologies scale, who benefits, and who bears the transition costs. Secondly, why market solutions and incrementalism fall short. A major thread in the book critiques approaches that rely primarily on market mechanisms, voluntary corporate pledges, or modest efficiency gains. Klein argues that decades of climate conferences and policy tinkering have not delivered the emissions cuts required by climate science, in part because fossil fuel interests have shaped rules, slowed regulation, and normalized delay. The book questions strategies that treat carbon reduction as a small adjustment to business as usual, warning that incrementalism collides with the physics of the atmosphere and the limited remaining carbon budget. Klein also scrutinizes the idea that consumers can shop their way out of crisis, pointing out how responsibility is often shifted from powerful producers to individuals with uneven resources and auctions. Rather than placing faith in a perfectly designed price signal, the argument leans toward direct public action, standards, bans, public investment, and planning that moves infrastructure quickly. This topic also highlights the political challenge of confronting entrenched power, suggesting that the barrier is less about missing solutions and more about organized resistance to deploying them at scale. Thirdly, the Green New Deal as a mobilizing framework. Klein positions the Green New Deal not as a single bill, but as a governing vision that matches climate ambition with economic transformation. The concept draws inspiration from historic periods of large public mobilization, using government capacity to drive rapid deployment of renewable energy, building retrofits, clean transit, and resilient public works. In the book, the appeal of the Green New Deal is its integration. Decarbonization is paired with good jobs, labor standards, and investments targeted to communities that have borne the brunt of pollution and disinvestment. Klein argues that this pairing is not optional messaging, but strategic necessity. People are more likely to support rapid change when it clearly improves daily life through lower energy bills, safer housing, better air quality, and stable employment. The framework also centers public ownership and accountability, asserting that critical infrastructure should serve public goals rather than shareholder value alone. By linking climate action to economic security, the Green New Deal becomes a coalition-building project, capable of uniting climate movements with labor, health advocates, and racial justice organizers. Fourthly, justice, frontline communities, and indigenous leadership. The book consistently emphasizes that climate change is experienced unevenly and that fair solutions must start with those most affected. Klein highlights how frontline communities, including many low-income neighborhoods, communities of color, and indigenous nations, face compounded exposure to pollution, extreme weather, and weak safety nets. This reality shapes a justice-centered approach to policy. Prioritize emissions reductions where people are harmed now, invest in adaptation where risk is highest, and ensure that new clean energy industries do not replicate old patterns of exploitation. Klein also underscores indigenous resistance to fossil fuel expansion as a critical source of leadership and legal strategy, often rooted in land stewardship and sovereignty. The argument suggests that respecting rights, treaties, and consent is not a secondary ethical add-on, but a practical requirement for legitimate and durable climate policy. In this topic, Klein pushes back against climate narratives that treat sacrifice as inevitable, proposing instead that a better quality of life can be widely shared if the transition is designed to redistribute power and resources rather than deepen inequality. Lastly, movement building, politics, and the fight against delay, Klein treats climate progress as a political contest shaped by organizing, storytelling, and pressure from below. The book pays attention to how social movements change what is considered realistic, making previously dismissed policies possible through sustained public engagement. This includes youth-led climate strikes, local fights against pipelines and drilling, and campaigns that demand institutional divestment from fossil fuels. Klein argues that elite consensus often lags behind public need, especially when industries that profit from extraction invest heavily in lobbying, advertising, and disinformation. Therefore, movement strategy becomes central. Build broad alliances, connect climate action to tangible improvements, and target the choke points where policy is blocked. Klein also discusses the danger of distraction, whether in the form of symbolic gestures, techno-utopian promises that postpone real cuts, or narratives that frame climate action as a threat to ordinary people rather than a defense of their future. The overarching message is that the climate timeline requires political acceleration, and acceleration comes from organized constituencies demanding decisive action and holding leaders accountable. In conclusion, this book is best suited for readers who want to understand climate change as a political and economic challenge, not just a scientific one. Activists, students, policy-curious professionals, and anyone frustrated by years of slow progress will find a clear explanation of why emissions keep rising and what kinds of changes could realistically reverse that trend. It can benefit a reader's life by turning climate anxiety into informed agency. Klein connects the crisis to everyday concerns such as jobs, housing, health, and democratic accountability, helping readers see climate action as something that can improve material conditions rather than only impose limits. Compared with many climate titles that focus mainly on technology, individual behavior, or abstract targets, this book argues for a whole society approach that links decarbonization with justice and public investment. Its value is in the synthesis. It ties frontline experiences, economic structures, and movement strategy into a coherent case for a Green New Deal-scale response. For readers weighing similar books, On Fire stands out for treating politics and power as the decisive variables and for offering a mobilizing framework that is both urgent and practical. If you would like to support Naomi Klein, you can buy the book through the Amazon link I've provided in the podcast description. After reading the book, please let me know what you think and share your thoughts. See you around.